Hello and welcome back. In this video, you'll learn how to disengage a Smartwire from InBrace brackets. To begin, you'll need the Smartwire InGager instrument, which has two different tips designed for two types of teeth. The angled tip is designed to disengage lockets from posterior brackets. The straight tip is designed to disengage lockets from anterior brackets. So, select the correct tip for each bracket based on the tooth it's bonded to. Next, ensure that the tip of the InGager instrument and the neck of the locket are properly joined together. An easy way to ensure the proper connection between the InGager and the locket is to gently rock the neck back and forth with the InGager in a mesial distal direction. You should feel a secure connection between the tip of the InGager and the neck of the locket before applying the disengagement force. A common mistake to avoid is pushing against the base of the bracket rather than the neck of the locket. The next step is the most important one, orienting the tip of the InGager properly, both mesial distally and buccolingually. To position the InGager correctly, adjust your chair position to confirm the correct instrument angle. Check out the technique video, How to Position Your Chair During Disengagement, which is available on Knowledge Base and YouTube. After adjusting your line of sight, orient the InGager with the proper mesial distal angulation. The InGager should be centered within the occlusal tabs, and the tip should run parallel to the long axis of the bracket. Avoid holding the instrument at an angle that runs mesially or distally into the occlusal tabs. This increases the force required to disengage the Smartwire and may even prevent removal altogether. Once you've adjusted the tip so it runs parallel to the long axis of the bracket, adjust the InGager with the proper buccolingual inclination. The ideal angle for disengagement is about 20 degrees from the long axis of the bracket. For anterior teeth, due to their anatomy, it isn't always possible to hold the instrument at the ideal 20-degree angle of inclination. When this occurs, orient the straight tip of the InGager as close as possible to the ideal angle of inclination, and then actively press the InGager against the lingual surface of the tooth while also applying pressure to the backside of the neck. To recap, before applying the disengagement force, make sure to select the correct tip of the InGager instrument for a posterior or anterior tooth. Make sure there is a secure connection between the InGager instrument and the neck of the locket. And orient the InGager properly, both mesial distally and buccolingually. Now you're ready to apply the disengagement force. First, place your ring finger on the dentition while holding the InGager. Using your ring finger as a fulcrum controls the disengagement force and steadies the tip of the instrument during disengagement. For posterior teeth, use a two-hand approach, where your dominant hand maintains the proper orientation of the InGager instrument, and your non-dominant hand applies the disengagement force. When applying the disengagement force, use the tip of a finger to push on the curve of the InGager tip, then increase the force until the locket disengages. The posterior teeth typically disengage with a single motion because you can push on the neck with the ideal 20-degree angle of inclination. Here's an example of a Smartwire disengagement on a live patient. The angled tip is selected for the posterior tooth. Notice how the InGager is gently rocked, which ensures a secure connection between the instrument tip and the neck. Once the tip is oriented properly mesial distally, the ideal angle of inclination is applied buccolingually. Then, pressure from the fingertip on the non-dominant hand is applied until the locket is disengaged. To disengage anterior teeth, where the lingual surface prevents any lingual inclination, you'll use two motions. First, push gingivally in a controlled downward motion. Then, as the locket moves gingivally, rotate the neck towards the lingual to release the locket from the occlusal tabs. Most challenges during Smartwire disengagement result from using the wrong buccolingual inclination. The natural tendency is to push labially towards the tooth, which is actually the opposite of what you want. Pushing labially is how you ligate the Smartwire. To disengage the locket, the neck should be pushed towards the lingual. Here's an example on a live patient. You can see the straight tip is pushed fully against the lingual surface of the upper incisor to get the proper inclination, and a gingival force is applied while also rotating the neck lingually. Sometimes, during the disengagement process, the locket is only partially disengaged because the disengagement process was performed at an improper mesiodistal angle or with insufficient force, like shown in this video. When zoomed in, you can see examples of partial disengagement where one or both shoulders of the locket are stuck underneath the occlusal tabs. If you suspect partial disengagement, first continue using the standard approach with the InGager instrument. If that doesn't work, then ligate the locket again and restart the disengagement process from the beginning. Now, if the standard disengagement process doesn't work, or the neck of the locket becomes damaged, you have a second option to remove the locket using a thin-tip scaler with a straight tip. To disengage the locket, orient the tip of the instrument between the base of the bracket and the locket. A thin-tip scaler is required because the tip must be narrow enough to fit behind the locket while depressing the locking spring. Next, make sure that the straight tip of the scaler is parallel to the long axis of the bracket. Using a scaler with a curved tip or using the wrong angle of approach may prevent the scaler from depressing the locking spring. Push the tip of the scaler gingivally to depress the locking spring, which releases the shoulders of the bracket from the occlusal tabs. Then turn the tip of the scaler towards the bracket and torque the locket out using the side of the scaler. In one motion, the shoulder should pass under the occlusal tabs and then move away from the bracket, which disengages the locket. If you still struggle to disengage a locket, here's some helpful tips. First, double-check your technique and make sure you're holding the InGager instrument at the correct angle before applying force. Second, try applying a little more force, and make sure to steady your hand by placing your ring finger on the dentition and use it as a fulcrum. It also helps to support your patient's jaw when applying force to the lower arch during disengagement. Third, remove any calculus buildup around the bracket because it can make Smartwire removal more difficult. Fourth, cool down the locking spring. You can do this by asking the patient to swirl cold water in their mouth for 1 minute. Or you can apply freeze spray to a Q-tip or microbrush and hold it against the gingival tab that houses the locking spring for at least 10 seconds. The locking spring is heat activated, so cooling down the bracket decreases the amount of force you need to remove the Smartwire, but you need to act quick while the spring is cool. Once you've mastered the basic techniques discussed in this video, you'll gain confidence and you can further refine your own technique. Soon you'll be able to remove the Smartwire in under a minute, like shown here. This concludes the instructions on how to disengage a Smartwire. To view other technique videos, visit Knowledge Base on the Smile Design Studio, found at portal.inbrace.com.